Imagine standing on the absolute precipice of becoming part of the most commercially dominant, generation-defining girl group in human history, only to realize that a single, two-word expletive barked over your shoulder in a crowded parking lot almost wiped your entire existence out of the narrative before the world ever learned your name. For the past 30 years, the official history of the Spice Girls has been packaged as a shiny, impenetrable monument to absolute sisterhood and unified girl power, a carefully manufactured cultural phenomenon where 5 distinct personalities fit together like flawless puzzle pieces. But within the last 24 hours, the glossy retro packaging of 1990s pop music has been completely pulled back, exposing a remarkably fragile, hyper-volatile back-end infrastructure that almost collapsed under the weight of a trivial backstage argument. On July 12, 2026, Melanie Chisholm, universally recognized as Sporty Spice, sat down for an incredibly raw, highly publicized conversation on the Louis Theroux podcast. During the interview, she dropped an absolute bombshell about the inner dynamics of the group's pre-fame era, revealing that a heat-of-the-moment clash with Victoria Beckham nearly got her completely kicked out of the band months before the public ever heard a single note of their debut single. The entire confrontation unfolded in February 1996 during the BRIT Awards, an evening that began as an exhilarating, champagne-fueled dream for 5 unreleased artists who found themselves sharing a high-end table with rock icon Lenny Kravitz. However, as the group was exiting the venue to locate their vehicle, an unexplained wave of tension caused Mel C to snap, turning around to face a pre-posh Beckham and bluntly telling her to F*** off. The immediate morning after fallout was nothing short of a career-ending emergency. Rather than dismissing it as casual, late-night bickering between exhausted peers, bandmates Melanie Brown and Jerry Halliwell immediately confronted Chisholm, stating they were thoroughly disgusted by her toxic behavior. Within hours, the group's management team intervened with a brutal, uncompromising ultimatum, informing the young singer that if she ever exhibited that type of behavior again, she would be instantly cast out of the group, a terrifying wake-up call that completely reshaped the entire trajectory of her life and mental health. The operational reality of this newly disclosed timeline offers an incredibly illuminating, slightly tragic look at the immense pressure cookers that major record labels build around young talent. At the time of the 1996 BRIT Awards, the Spice Girls were essentially a high-stakes corporate gamble. They had signed their contracts and were working around the clock on choreography and studio sessions, but their breakout anthem, Wannabe, wouldn't hit the airwaves until July of that year. Management was operating on a razor-thin margin of error, viewing any sign of internal friction or unmanaged attitude as a direct threat to a multi-million-dollar financial launch. When Mel C woke up the morning after her outburst, the sheer panic of realizing she had almost thrown away her childhood dream over a minor, localized disagreement completely broke her sense of security. She admitted to Theroux that the threat of being replaced freaked her out so intensely that it fractured her confidence just as the band was launching into global superstardom. Rather than processing the anger naturally, she internalized the fear of making another mistake, turning that desperate need for compliance inward. This specific warning served as the direct catalyst for a dark, decades-long battle with hyperperfectionism, obsessive exercising, and severe eating disorders, proving that the shiny, athletic, sporty Spice persona the world fell in love with was being actively maintained by a young woman terrified that her next mistake would make her completely obsolete. The digital response to this podcast disclosure across pop culture history channels, music commentary spaces, and dedicated Spice Girls forums has been a massive, deeply analytical conversation. On platforms like Reddit and TikTok, archival footage of the 1996 BRIT Awards has been dug up and recirculated at an astronomical rate, with fans meticulously studying the background of old crowd clips to see if they can spot the exact moment the tension began to boil over between the bandmates. The internet is highly divided over the severity of the management's reaction, with viral commentary videos questioning why Mel B and Jerry Halliwell reacted with such intense disgust over a standard, albeit vulgar, disagreement. A massive faction of the fanbase is pointing out the immense double standard of 1990s pop management, noting that male rock bands of the same era were celebrated for tearing apart hotel rooms and engaging in physical backstage brawls, while a young woman was threatened with total career erasure for uttering a single, common curse word to a colleague. Simultaneously, Users are praising Mel C for her radical honesty, contrasting her vulnerable reflections with the hyper-vetted, overly polished public relations statements that typically define modern celebrity retrospectives. When you step back and look at why this vintage situation has escalated so profoundly within the modern news cycle, it exposes a massive, highly relevant truth about how the entertainment industry continues to treat human beings as corporate intellectual property. The primary reason this revelation feels so jarring to audiences is that it completely shatters the fundamental myth that the Spice Girls brand was built upon. Girl power wasn't just a catchy marketing slogan, it was a global, commercialized doctrine that preached absolute, unwavering female solidarity and mutual support above all else. To learn that behind the scenes, the very architecture of that sisterhood was monitored by authoritarian managers who were willing to permanently discard a member over a momentary lapse in politeness reveals the deep corporate cynicism underlying the pop music machine. It shows that beneath the empowering anthems and the colorful, individualized outfits, these women were trapped in an environment where they were expected to perform a flawless, idealized version of friendship under the constant threat of capital punishment, forcing them to suppress genuine human emotions just to keep the corporate gears turning. This dynamic offers an incredibly fascinating, highly cautionary lesson when applied to our contemporary landscape of influencer culture and digital creator spaces. Today, modern content groups, influencer collectives, and collaborative YouTube channels are built on the exact same structural foundation as the 1990s pop groups. They package a highly curated, deeply aspirational illusion of effortless friendship and shared living to maximize digital engagement and secure premium brand deals. But as the public has seen with the messy, highly public collapses of numerous digital creator collectives over the last few years, you cannot force diverse, creative individuals into a localized pressure cooker and expect them to never experience raw, unscripted friction. The difference is that while the Spice Girls were able to hide their internal fractures behind high-level management walls and delayed podcast interviews 30 years later, modern influencers have their meltdowns, contract disputes, and backstage arguments documented in real time by online communities and leaked group chats. Mel C's story serves as a stark reminder that when you commodify human relationships for mass entertainment, the emotional toll doesn't simply vanish. It merely compounds behind closed doors, waiting for the right moment to break through the surface. The cultural timing of this revelation is also incredibly calculated, landing at a moment where it effectively provides a highly graceful, deeply human explanation for why the group's modern-day business operations have completely stalled out. For the past several months, the global pop community has been aggressively speculating about a massive, heavily rumored 30th anniversary reunion tour for 2026, with major outlets hinting at everything from stadium dates to a highly anticipated Netflix documentary project. However, during a recent promotional run on Australian radio, Mel C completely shut down the fantasy, bluntly confirming that all reunion plans have officially collapsed and that absolutely no live shows will be taking place this year due to unresolvable scheduling and timing conflicts among the members. By opening up about the deep, systemic psychological scars and internal power dynamics that define their initial rise to fame, Chisholm is subtly giving the public a much deeper, more empathetic framework to understand why a modern-day reunion is so monumentally difficult to pull off. She is reminding the world that these 5 women aren't just legacy pop avatars who can be casually plugged into a stadium stage whenever a milestone anniversary rolls around. They are individuals who carry a massive amount of shared, highly complex historical trauma from an era that almost broke them. Ultimately, the bittersweet fallout from this podcast disclosure leaves the music industry facing a compelling, highly unresolved industry question regarding the true cost of legacy pop nostalgia. As the group's landmark anniversary passes with nothing more than a commemorative coin release to mark 3 decades of pop history, the revelation of a 1996 blowout proves that the ghosts of a celebrity's past are never truly laid to rest. The public is left to wonder whether the world will ever see all 5 Spice Girls share a live stage again, or if the deep-seated anxieties, rigid management ultimatums, and lingering emotional protections that were established during their initial, meteoric rise have created a permanent barrier that can never be fully crossed. Mel C's vulnerability has reminded us that behind the multi-platinum records, the iconic outfits, and the global stadium spectacles, the truest, most enduring element of a Spice Girls story isn't the commercial perfection they projected to the world, but the complex, fiercely protected human boundaries that they are still fighting to maintain decades after the music stopped playing.